So, picking up from where we left off last week, we have, I'm in Daz Studio. We have a Genesis 3 female loaded up. Last week, I took you through the process of creating a controller that would put her feet in a high heel position, because regular shoes are not difficult at all. Like if the feet are in the flat position, they're very straightforward. So I wanted to skip ahead to really the harder stuff, which is high heels, because in doing high heeled shoes and the rigging of them, you have some hoops you have to jump through, really to make it work, at least the way I think it should work. So last week, part of rigging was touched on. I don't know if I referenced it as part of rigging or not, but it was something I touched on that relates to rigging, was putting together a pose and a controller that would drive the feet into the high heel position. So what we've done with that, if I go into my my properties and I have show hidden properties turned on, I might not have hidden this actually. I might have kept it visible. You'll see I have here a controller that I've made, CGBytes lace-up panel high heel shoes pose. Okay, and just to recap, this is what that does. Let's zoom in here a little bit. Let's just select a foot. We'll frame that up. Sometimes Daz Studio does not want to play well with my Wacom. So to recap a little bit, here's the controller that I made, CGB lace-up panel high heels pose, and in a final product, this would be hidden because even though I personally would just as soon use a dial and just drag the dial up when I drop the shoes on or whatever so that things go in the right position, end users, from everything folks tell me, the end users actually like having a pose to apply. So that's what we do. We'll actually put a dial on here, and I think I went into some depth last week about how, you know, these things aren't really morphs, but people think of them as morphs. It's not even really a pose per se, but people think of it as a pose, and there's all kinds of stuff like that that can actually create these weird disconnects between us as developers and artists and you know, testers and end users and all that stuff. So it's kind of part of our job to you know, part of the job, I think, is to think that stuff through and try to think, okay, this is what the end user is going to see it as, but this is what I know it as, and be able to sort of navigate the difference in those things so that we can communicate well. So anyway, I went into some of that stuff last week, and to recap, here is our dial or slider, whichever you want to call it. And if we go into parameter settings, you'll see here the things that it controls. And that was made just by adding a property, setting the position for the foot and toes, and then doing an ERC freeze command, which you can, you know, I don't want to go into too in depth into that right now because that'll end up creating some confusion. So where we are at the moment is we want to load up our shoe model that we made. And the reason that we have that pose is so that we can drive. I do want to actually illuminate this a little bit for just a second. The reason we have that pose is that pose will sit on top of existing rotations. It'll put the feet in position, but it'll do it additively. So if the feet are at 0 and you dial this pose up, then they're going to go to whatever values on the pose. But if the feet were at 10, it'll go to whatever values in this pose plus 10. So you get this addition of your shape, your pose, on top of whatever is there. By doing that, it allows us to apply the pose for the shoes on top of existing poses. So you can check this out, but if you've made one of these already following the course last week, then you could check this out by looking at what you've done and applying it on top of existing G3 female poses, and you should see that it actually is totally additive. It'll just sit right on top. So that allows us then, once we put the shoes on and you apply the pose, then you can apply other poses. You can use our shoe pose and then apply other poses, and it'll all play quite nicely together. So let's go over. I need to load up my ZTL from last week, and I need to go in here, shoes, okay, and so here is the set of shoes that we made last week, or that I worked up during last week's seminar. Okay. So it's not a bad little mesh. Pretty happy with that. And before I jump into this too hardcore, I'm going to take a quick look and make sure that I actually did UVs on this. I don't remember if I did, but I think I might have. So, and if I did, I know I would have done it on the one side. So let's take a quick look. So I'm going to check this, set my UV map to 4096, create from UV check, and not perfect UVs. I could stand to lay them out a little bit. Maybe I'll save doing the layout on these shoes for an entire seminar sometime just on doing UV layouts. One of the nice things about Daz Studio is the way that you can update geometries and UVs in the program is really, really handy, especially out of a ZBrush-based workflow. So you can see that little guy right there, there's a fella right there that could stand to have some better UVs. Let's take a quick look at this, just because I don't like seeing that. That's the one bad spot that I see. Like, the layout can change, but the that's not cool to me. So let's just flatten this guy, and then somewhere, whenever you see a ton of white after a UV check, that means somewhere something is real tiny. Like that. Right there. There's our offending little fella. So let's turn him on. And I can fix that probably pretty quickly. Actually, I think I'm going to, you guys are going to see a quick little trick here that's kind of nifty. I'm going to break this off for a second. Just got to get exactly the selection I want. There we go. Was that? Yes, that was the one that did it. Yeah, that guy's good. Okay, cool. So I'm going to actually break this off for a second. And then re-UV just this bit. And now you can see it come out nice and smooth. And then I'm going to go to merge. I'm going to have UV turned on and weld. I'm going to merge down. Sometimes I'll run a polish command just to make sure that everything stayed like connected properly. So now that I've merged that down, I undo that command after I check that too. So I know I'm kind of flying really fast here, but bear with me for just a second. So I merged that down after I made sure that stuff had UVs broken off. Now I'm going to flatten it, and you'll see this guy is up here, and we'll do just a little bit of UV layout work for just a moment. It really irritated me that that had some bad UVs on it. So I'm not really looking to make these perfect at the moment. I couldn't stand seeing that like that. So now let's do another UV check, and we shouldn't have any of that kind of business. Cool, that's much better. So now we could save that and come back and do a nice UV layout on that later. Where like right now we have nice unwrapped shells, and then we'll come back later and then do a layout where we position them all together. Like I would group the all the laces together in one area, the eyelets in one area, all that kind of stuff, so that it makes a little more sense to look at. So now that we've done that, I can mirror this shoe over. It's going to have the same UVs. I'm not going to worry about texture mapping this today because we've covered texturing in a number of other videos. If anyone has any questions about it specifically, you can ask, and maybe I can talk about that stuff a little bit. But for right now, I want to get into rigging. Rigging high-heeled shoes is kind of a thing that people have asked a lot about. So let's do that. All right. So you can see I have a stand-in of the character's feet in a subtool that's just for reference. I'm going to check my GoZ, make sure that it is hooked up to Daz Studio. So I use a lot of different programs here, so sometimes I like to double check that and make sure that I'm hooked up to the right thing. And from there, we can send these shoes over to Daz Studio. So I'm not going to convert them to a subdivision surface yet. I don't want any of that extra geometry showing up in the program because sometimes the way that it interpolates that stuff can mess with skin weights. So it's better, I think, to work with no subdivisions on. Build up your skin weights, get as far as you can without the subdivisions, then turn those on so that all that stuff calculates on top of your vertex weights. So we'll hit accept, and here we can see our shoes. And it looks like I need to make a few shape adjustments. So I'm going to save my ZTL. And want to select Genesis 3 female. I'm going to send her over to ZBrush. And then I can make any adjustments I need to make to the shoes. Which there's a few to be made. So let's just real quickly, with symmetry turned on, move a few pieces here and there. Okay, there's that. I do think we need to mask some of this off. You got to be really careful about this that you don't end up stretching things funny in some places. So I'm going to turn that wireframe off. A lot of times when you have the wireframe on in ZBrush and you move things, it'll leave kind of this ghosting of wires that can be kind of annoying to try and look at. And it looks like I need to actually move the entire shoe down just a little bit, or at least the bottom of it down a little bit. So I'll do that with the transpose tool. The modeling related tools and things that I'm using this week, I'm going to be going over kind of quickly since I've been kind of touching on a lot of that stuff in past installments. So we'll just make a few last minute little tweaks. Okay. And where this panel is separate, we just want to make sure that we have that actually connecting. I think I'll tweak the shape just a little bit more by inflating around the bottom edge, just so I know we're not going to have it separating away from the rest of the shoe. Okay. Every once in a while I like to turn on transparent so I can see through things, see if there's any little things that I want to touch on before I move forward. Maybe consider a little bit of a change right here. Very, very subtle, very small changes. But every little bit counts, you know. Every little bit counts. Right. And as my wife would say, Bob's your uncle. So now we're ready to send these over and replace what we have. So I'm going to hit Control G. And when it comes over, this time I'm going to tell it to update base mesh. And you'll see the shape change. So there we have our shoes in Daz Studio. And now the fun, if you can call it that, begins. I personally despise this part, I'll be honest. If ever there's a point in working on shoes that things are going to get screwy, right here it is. Rigging shoes, rigging high-heeled shoes is kind of annoying for a lot of reasons. But we'll try to break it down the best I can. So we have our shoes here. I would probably go ahead and take a moment here to set up, like go into the grouping tool and set up different material surfaces and assignments and all that kind of stuff. But for the sake of demonstration, we're just going to jump right onto rigging. And you could actually come back and do that stuff at any point later too. So one of the things I like, you know, Daz managed to win me over finally. It took them a long time, but they finally won me over because a lot of the tools that they've put in here are really, really amazing. Like now I'm actually at a point where I'm actually starting to develop, like if I do something for Poser, I'm actually starting it in here a lot. Because some of these tools are just crazy. So let's go to Edit, Figure, Transfer Utility. Then I'm going to go to Scene Item. And my scene item, that's what we're working from, is going to be the Genesis 3 female. And then my target is going to be shoes demo. And under projection template, I'm going to go down to footwear and hit accept. And it's going to kick those back. And the reason it's going to kick those back is because I did not freeze my skeleton. I didn't bake the skeleton in place. So I want you to see, though, that that's what happens when you don't do that. So if you go and use a transfer utility, you see the stuff go shooting back, then that's why. So I'm going to unfit those. Now that you've seen that happen, I'm going to select my Genesis 3 female and get my joint editing tool. Okay, joint editor. And then just select any joint, doesn't matter. Right click. We'll go to Edit, Bake Joint Rotations. And if something snaps or it does something funny, that's okay. Sometimes things like that happen. It just is. it's fine. We're going to end up killing a lot of that later anyway. We're baking the joint rotations because we're actually going to use the skeleton there to create a difference between the shoe, like where the high-heeled shoe ends up versus where we want it to start, because we actually want these shoes to start in a flat position corresponding to her feet. So let's run our transfer utility again. And back into footwear. Okay. And I do believe need to take a quick look. There's something else causing those to snap back like that, and this angers me. So let's just take a quick look through here. Pardon me. Let's keep that. There's a lot of different things that can cause it to snap like that. So sometimes you got to hunt stuff down. All right, I have show hidden turned on. I may end up backpedaling on this. I'm not big on, like, I don't make a ton of shoes, so this is something that I don't do a lot of. I know how to do it, but if there's anything in here that makes me nervous, it's doing shoes like this. So bear with me for a second. Y'all might get to see me fumble a little bit. Okay. I don't want any morph targets brought over yet. Okay. There we go. So the changes I made there were to bind this to current shapes. Figure, transfer utility. Footwear. So Genesis 3 female, item shape, current, scene item, shoes demo, scene item default. And this is all temporary. And I just screwed that up because I forgot to set everything. I should not have hit that button. There we go. So let's run that one more time. We'll go figure, transfer utility, Genesis 3 female, we want the current shape. Scene item is going to be the shoes, and we want the current shape on that. Footwear is our projection template. I don't want any morph targets brought over. None. And that's interesting. That was working a second ago. Current footwear. Let's see. Map, face groups, region groups. And I'm betting it snaps back again. Yep. I find that vexing. I find that very, very vexing. Should not be doing that. Let us just unfit those You know, sometimes you can learn things from watching somebody make mistakes too. And I am totally down with admitting when I make mistakes. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save a copy of these since they've got a rig in them. Oops. Okay. And I'm going to reload my G3 female. Just out of curiosity. There's a good reason I was nervous about trying to do one of these things live on shoes, because shoes are one of those areas, like high-heeled shoes are one of those things that no matter how many times I go through the process, I swear I'll always have to go through it like a handful of times before it seems to work right. So you guys are getting to kind of see, you know, it's like even those of us who've been doing this stuff forever and a day, you know, sometimes you have things like this happen at the most inopportune times. Like when you're trying to show other people, that's an inopportune time. All right. Okay, let's take a quick look here. Now remember, this was just a preliminary rig, too. So I want to make sure that, yes, there we go. So my pose, I'm going to have to backpedal just a little bit here and explain to you guys what's going on. Yet, actually, zeroing the pose isn't going to have anything to do with anything, you guys. I'm looking over the chat. Because zeroing the pose is just going to send things back to their original point. And actually, where I did the rig with the baked skeleton in there, that's part of the issue, is that there's an offset between what we're conforming it to and where it was made. So... all right. Saw your comment there about theater mode, Gina. Nice. All right, so what I'm going to do is just take a quick look at where my pose drives these feet to. So if I check her foot, I'll find that the bend is set to 45, and then the toes are set to negative 45. So now that I have a rig inside these shoes, what we want, we have our final shape here. This is actually fine. Where we're at, even though I kind of stumbled for a minute, where we're at is actually a good starting point. It's a little different than what I know you find out there in some of the other videos and things that folks have done on this, but this is actually still a really good place to be. What I'm going to do now is reverse these rotations. So like we know that was 45, so we'll set it to negative 45. And then we should be able to grab the toe on this shoe and set it, should be able to set it to 45. Now we'll notice that the weights, the skin weights, aren't really working on the toe, so we need to alter those real quick. So let's make our pose symmetrical on the shoe. Right now I do not have the shoes fitted to the figure. I'm actually just using the rigging that we shoved in them to manipulate them so we can turn them and use that as a basis to move to our to the shape that we're going to want them in for final rigging. So here you can see I've got them posed that far. Really, since these shoes are a hard toe, I mean, you know, the soles of those shoes are not going to bend. So we probably don't even have to do what I'm about to do, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff out there, I think, that probably doesn't even bother rigging the toes on something like this. But I'll go ahead and do it so you can see it in case you want to use that on something a little more complicated that might need that rigging. So once we have that temporary rig put in the shoes and we can bend them, you know, we can bend them corresponding to our figure shape. The next thing I'm going to do here is make sure that I have some skin weights on the toes. So let's go into my weight mapping tool. And it's a little counterintuitive because in the viewport you'll select a bone called toes, but you're actually going to work with the toe bones, the smaller ones that you can't select in the viewport. So if in our scene tab we arrow down through these, you can see that none of these toes currently have any weights attached to them. So I think I want to, actually they do have some weight attached to them. Sorry, I just didn't have it selected here. So regardless of those weights though, I want to work primarily with the big toe. So I'm going to make my brush nice and large, like 100 pixels, about 50 pixel on the inside. And come in and just kind of paint over that a bit. Let's do a little bit for each of these. And then I'm going to smooth each of them a little tiny bit. Meant to be smoothing there. Sorry. 150. I do wish Daz Studio kept your brush sizes in its preference. I get tired of having to change those all the time. Of course, you can also hold the control key to alternate. So like if I'm in the normal skin weight painting tool, if I hold control, then it switches out to smoothing. So now let's select our left toes. We're still not really affecting anything. Alright. So just going to spend a little bit of time on these skin weights. You know, I might just end up adding a map to the toes. Let's just add a general weight map to that actual toe bone and ignore these guys. This might be a little bit better way to run with this time. This is the thing about doing this kind of stuff where you're working with positions, like you're working with built-in poses on the figure. You're working with something where you've made a pose that puts something in a particular position. it's almost always going to be the feet that you'll do this on. It's not an exact process. There's always going to be a lot of futzing around with this kind of stuff. So let's take this stuff, let's backtrack just a little tiny bit. Okay. I really want to work primarily with, I meant to be on that big toe there. There we go. So all I'm trying to do here is get this stuff moving with this shape. And of course it's not wanting to play nice right now. So there's actually another technique for doing this that I wasn't sure I wanted to pull out, but I think I'm going to, because this is kind of getting on my nerves, kind of making me look bad here. So in the end, all that really matters is the shape that we get here anyway. So there is a, I probably should have just jumped to this. It's what I get for trying to follow. Like, I was trying to bring in some techniques that I see from other people, and sometimes that kind of bites me in the rear. So let's just the end goal is just getting these shoes flat. And since most people are working, you know, straight out of Daz Studio or Poser, using the rigging that's present is a great way to do that. But it does take some work. And you know what? Let's just jump forward to a much more direct way to deal with this. So I'm going to reconnect this stuff to ZBrush since it's been reloaded by sending it from ZBrush back over to Daz Studio and hitting update an existing object. We'll accept that, and I'm actually not going to change anything. I'm just going to let it create a morph for a second, and then we're going to get rid of it. But that re-establishes our connection between something in ZBrush and something in Daz Studio once it's been created or kicked out and then reloaded. So now I'm going to send these shoes back over. I'm going to, in ZBrush. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to move quickly on some of this. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. In ZBrush, I'm going to store a morph target of our final shape here. Then back in Daz Studio, I'm going to select our shoes, send them over, and then I'm going to select the G3 female and send her over. Now the reason I have to do it separately is because they're not parented to her. If they were parented to her, I could send her and them over at the same time, but I'm trying to keep those kind of separated at the moment. Gina says, my Go Z window seems to look different than hers. Are you talking about the one where I'm leaving Daz Studio or the one where I'm coming back in? Okay. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting for a little feedback there, I'm going to go back into the shoes. And so now you can see we can switch between the shape we want to end with and currently the shape we have with them bent forward. And then what I'm going to do here is just make some small changes to this, and they don't even have to be all that exact. This is really what I should have started off with, and I apologize to all you guys for not just jumping right to the good stuff. So I got symmetry on. I'm going to just try to make these look okay like this. The end user is never going to see these actually like this. So then I'm just going to manipulate some of this so that we're pushing all of this down into place. And the only reason we're doing this is so that this mesh is in place to pick up rigging when we use the transfer utility again. That is the only reason at all that we're doing any of this. The closer the shape is to the foot, the cleaner that transfer utility will be able to create skin weights. So we can really just skip a lot of that business about the using the rigging and all of that to manipulate it. We could just do all that inside here, which is, thinking back on it, is kind of how I've been doing it lately. But you know, sometimes sometimes you're not that confident in something. And, you know, this is probably my weak spot. You guys are seeing me at my low point here. This is my weak spot. And so I made sure that I went back through and I looked up a bunch of different material on this. I was like, well, maybe I should, you know, kind of go with the standard. But as is often the case, I kind of end up with my own ways of doing things. So I should just kind of stick with that. And all that said, here we are. So the real goal here is just getting this stuff into a shape where we know that it's going to transfer well using the transfer utility. That is really all this is about. That's all that first pass of rigging was really about. So just little things here and there I want to make sure that I get kind of tweaked out. Try to make this stuff lay pretty close to our shape. All right. And of course, we can switch back and forth and check. So there's what we want as our final shape, and here's our rig shape. That's probably a good way to think of it too, is there's your final shape and your rigging shape. Okay. So now let's send this back over. And let's just accept that as a morph. So now that that's accepted as a morph, we can dial that shape up, and we have the shape we're going to use to rig from. Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. So Kim, we're referring to some stretching there. Yeah, I'll tweak that stuff up a little bit. It's actually not that big a deal whether it's there or not. Again, you know, it's like if you want, the cleaner the shape is, the better the rigging is going to work out. So you might want to do some of that kind of stuff, like I'm doing there, just tweaking that stuff. It's one of those things. It's like if you can do it, if you can make it look a little cleaner on there, you probably should. but it's actually not 100% integral, because in the end, we're going to drive this shoe back to our final shape with a morph anyway. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. All right. So now that we have this shape, we should be able to transfer our rigging one more time, and this time we're going to do it with this current shape involved. And right now, since this is a rigged copy of the shoes, we have a morph involved. It has all this rigging. It has some stuff involved. We might want to go ahead. It's not a bad idea. Like, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I'm going to go into edit, figure, rigging, and hit convert figure to prop. That way it freezes all that stuff. So now that's just our shape. It's just done. So now we're going to go back into the transfer utility. I'm going to select as my scene item, Genesis 3 female. This time it's going to stay, the item shape is going to stay default. And then my scene item is going to be, it's going to now say prop, shoes demo. And that's going to stay at default. Then I'm going to select footwear as my projection template. And do I want any morphs to transfer into this yet? Yeah, let's keep that. So now let's hit accept. And it should show no changes like it just did right there. So now I'm going to select the G3 female and apply my pose. And when I apply my pose, you're going to see it's going to do some wonky stuff. So before we go any further, we want to go through and make some slight changes to our skin weights. Probably not a whole lot either, because most of the fix on this is actually going to come from our morphs. But I do want to smooth some of these weights out just a little bit, because again, the smoother the shape, the closer the shape, using the skin weights, the better everything will be. And with the way that I made this, actually, we'll probably get incredibly close . So I'm just going over each of these toes. And I saw in the chat a minute ago, Gina had mentioned something about shoes and how having those toes in there cause things to crinkle and do all kinds of stuff. And it can. It can, but it doesn't have to. And I actually prefer having those in there because a lot of times, like if you were using, let's say you made a preset, you made a character for the G3 female that uses all kinds of scaling and things, and you've used scaling and stuff on the toes, but then you throw these shoes on that, and you don't have those bones in there. If those bones aren't there, then that stuff's not going to propagate through when it tries to automatically transfer what you've made into the clothing. So a lot of times, like there's a school of thought that says if you don't need those bones, don't have them there. And for a long, long time, I probably would have agreed with that. And inside Poser, I kind of still agree with that to a certain degree. But with the way the Genesis figures work, especially G3, and a lot of the stuff that, a lot of character development type stuff that I'm doing for them, I actually want to have as much of that represented as I can so that that stuff has a chance to transfer through in the end. So here we've tweaked these skin weights out. Let's look at the weights on our foot, because I bet, yes, we're going to have to tweak out that heel a little bit. So we could do that on the heel itself. I'm actually just going to do that on the foot, because I'm pretty confident that that's going to keep me with the a shape a little closer to what I'm after in the end anyway. We could try either way though. I mean, this is a lot of this stuff is experimentation right up to the end. So let's just see. This might be one of those cases where I take the heel with it. Yeah, let's go that route. Let's switch off to the grouping tool. And I'm going to, this is kind of a nifty little trick that I'm about to pull. I'm going to take the grouping tool. I'm going to change my selection mode to lasso. And our mesh isn't sitting symmetrically right now. I think you could select symmetrically, but I don't want to chance it. So I'm going to select what I know is the same corresponding polys on both sides. Then I'll hold Control and hit the plus sign a few times to expand that selection up to where I get just the faces that I know I want to be completely locked to my heels. And then I'll right click, still with the grouping tool, I'll right click and go to Geometry Visibility and hit Hide Unselected Polygons. Now I can just select, drag a selection around the polygons for this heel. Now if I switch back to my my skin weight tool and I turn on respect selection, whatever commands I give are only going to affect these polys. So now I can go right click, weight editing, fill selected to 100%. Then if I go back to my group tool, I select the polys for the opposite heel. Now I'll go back to my weight map brush. And let's just drill down over here to the right heel. And we're going to repeat that. And you may be asking yourself, why is he not using this skin weight symmetry command? I try that from time to time, and it's hit or miss how well the symmetry is going to transfer over, honestly. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. A moment like this where I know I can just select some polys and hit fill, I'll just go ahead and do that because I know it's going to work. Okay. Then I want to go back to my grouping tool for just a moment, select all of these polys, and this is a nice little feature where we can create a temporary selection. So I'm going to create selection set from selected just so if I need to go back and grab these heels later, it's easy to do. So we'll just call that heels. And then right click, go to Geometry Visibility, Show All Polygons. And here you can see we're going to need to do a little bit of smoothing in our weight map. So I'm going to expand my selection up a few times. Go back to my skin weight tool. And just looking at what this is doing with the heel, I probably do want to weight it to the foot. You never really know until you see how things are going to react. So I really do wish, you know, like I do wish that you could be more exact with some of this stuff, but this is not an exact science. So there's that. And you have to get comfortable with the fact that almost everything you do with this kind of stuff, they're exact commands you can give, but how you give them, where you give them, why you give them, and how they all interact with each other is almost always an experiment. So there's that. So let's go back into our grouping tool, and I'm just going to deselect all those polys, hit the plus sign so that I get those heels again. I'm going to expand that selection up just a little bit and add those to my temporary group. And then I'm going to hide all the unselected polys. Select all the polys of the left heel. And I do believe I'm just going to bind those. If I say do a hard bind, that's fill selected. So I'm going to do a hard bind of those straight to the foot, and that's looking better already. So now let's grab the polys for the other heel, get our weight tool, go to the right foot, and we're going to do a hard bind there. Okay. So now, and you can access some of those grouping tools from inside the weight mapping tool. So we can just right click without switching tools and go to show all polygons. So now I still have my right heel selected, so I'm going to expand my selection a little bit. Actually, let's just deselect those. I think most of this can be done with just some straight painting from here on out. So let's go to geometry selection, clear selection. I'm also going to turn off respect selection over here and just do a little bit of skin weighting, a little bit of painting on up the back of this. This doesn't have to be, again, like I've said a few times about other parts of this, it doesn't have to be very exact because our end shape is actually going to be driven by a morph. So this is all really just to get things in place so that they inherit some good skin weights, and it'll make it play nicely with poses and things applied down the road. All right. And just for the sake of trying it, let's right click and hit weight editing and do weight map symmetry. We'll go right to left. And it actually worked pretty well. I'm kind of surprised. Oh, wait, no, I see where... No, it's actually pretty symmetrical. So we're going to have to go back through and look at our toe weights a little bit. And one way that I like to deal with some of this stuff is you can give a smoothing command in here. So let's go to our grouping tool. I'm going to turn on symmetry, and I'm just going to I'm going to drag a selection around the end of the foot. Riverthorn asks about rigidity weights. I am not going to be doing anything with rigidity on these because the shape on these is going to be pretty solid to begin with. So, you know, it's not really something that we need to use here. Honestly, I avoid using rigidity maps at all costs. I've seen them do some weird stuff. They can be handy, but the primary use that I have for them is using rigidity maps to force something not to pick up the auto-generated morphs that will happen every time you load it in. That's one of the things that happens in Daz Studio that I'm a little iffy on. There's a lot that I like here. There's some things I'm like, you guys might want to think about that. Whenever you load a conforming figure in, you fit something into a figure, it will look at that figure and try to auto-transfer anything it doesn't already see in itself. And there are really kind of two ways to prevent auto-generated morphs from creating all kinds of havoc. You can either go ahead and look up the morph. Like when you see an auto-generated morph create a problem, you have to it takes a little bit of experience. Like you have to sort of take some time to figure out, oh, is that a skin weight problem or is that an auto-generated morph problem? Like when you see a mesh get distorted. The two different ways that I like to address those kind of issues, whenever you see something conform and it has some jankiness to it, you're going to end up looking for either skin weights are the problem or a morph is the problem. And if it's an auto-generated morph, if you just delete the morph, the next time you load that on, that morph's going to reappear. It's going to shove it right back in and you're right back where you started. So you can either replace the morph by sending, you can do a few different techniques going back and forth between Zbrush or whatever modeler you're using. You can replace the morph or you can use rigidity maps. That's the point where I like to use rigidity maps. But rigidity maps don't really do, like, I'm not sold on their usefulness in terms of their relationship to actual skin weights. They're really good for preventing auto-generated morphs from causing problems, though. So I kind of went on a little longer about that than I intended to, but hopefully that makes some sense. Yeah, River, where you say you use it to keep things from destroying extreme body morphs. That's another good use of those. There are some pros and cons to using them, but that's kind of a discussion I think I want to save for another time. Henrico says normal morphs also don't work so great to fix it. It depends. See, he said my problem is that if you use transfer utility in Daz Studio to auto-fit a piece of clothing, the Genesis figure bones that are transferred could cause great deformation in some areas. Yes, they can. And you really are going to spend a lot of time working with skin weights. Skin weights are the bread and butter of everything inside Daz Studio, in my opinion. And really, they're kind of fundamental to the larger world of 3D. Like, if you start in this stuff and you're working with Daz Studio or Poser, and then you decide one day you want to grow into 3D Studio Max or Maya or Houdini or Cinema 4D or even Lightwave, for those who still use it, or Blender. All of those higher end. Notice my air quotes there. You can't hear them, but they're there. All of those high end programs, skin weights are the rule of the day. And you're going to end up, really kind of getting used to those. So Daz Studio, I like that Daz Studio is based on that, because that's really more in line with a lot of the working paradigms of the quote-unquote high-end applications. And it's for a reason. There's so much you can do with skin weights. They're incredibly powerful. They're a little more difficult to work with than some of the things we might be used to, like if you come from a background of Poser. But it's worth it. It's worth getting your head around. So anyway, let me get back into things here. I'm just going to redo my selection that I had, because there are some things that did not get picked up the way I wanted. Okay. And see how I was saying earlier that sometimes that symmetry doesn't quite work? Here it's not working. So I'm going to turn that off and just manually add a few things to my selection. Well, sometimes you're better off to actually just select through from a side view, which is what I'm going to do now. So there. I saw Kim's comment about Blender and high-end. Actually, Blender is a very, very high-end program. Yeah, but Blender is amazingly powerful. In my opinion, it's hard to use. It has an interface that drives me absolutely bonkers. But as far as what it's capable of, I'll put it next to anything. So, but as most folks probably know, if they've listened to any of my stuff or read anything or blah, 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 followed 6S1 stuff ever, I'm a Maya junkie. I eat, sleep, and breathe Maya. Maya and ZBrush are, that's my peanut butter and jelly. That's my jam right there, folks. So, yeah, Blender is very confusing. I saw the last comment there. So let's jump back into this. I want to do some skin weight smoothing, and I want to do it with a command. So I have my big toe selected. I'm going to right-click with my skin weight tool and go to weight editing and smooth selected, and just give that command. And that's going to restrict that command. If I have respect selection turned on, that command is going to be given and only affect the polys I have selected, which is why I made that selection. So then I'll just walk across each of these, continuing that smoothing command. And for Gina, earlier you mentioned how the toe bones oftentimes cause problems and things. This is kind of the thing that I do almost every time that sort of helps smooth that stuff out and gives me a way to kind of work with things that that I've found to be really successful. So where did we go? Where did it go? Oh, there we go. Smooth selected. And here's our last one. Smooth selected. Boom. So now where this mesh is not contiguous, where the upper is a shell separate from the sole, I kind of expected if there was going to be a problem, it would come in right there. That's okay. We'll deal with that in just a moment. For now, though, I want to finish giving that smooth command. We can try using symmetry. Let's do weight map symmetry. Entire figure, left to right. And just to make sure that it worked, let's jump over and see if we have something that looks similar to this on the right small toe 4. And we do. Yay, that's good. All right, so I'm going to clear my selection now. You know what? Actually, before I clear that selection, this is just a good idea. I'm going to make another temporary selection set. I'm going to call this toes area. So now I can deselect those. I'm going to change this to just a regular wire shaded, just so I can see some things a little more clearly. Now I'm going to go back to my skin weights and just do a little bit of smoothing from small toe 4. Again, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay, and here I'm just working with my skin weights on the actual foot joint a little bit so that we harden some of this back up and close any gaps that may have happened. I do want to work with a lower sensitivity. It calls it sensitivity. It's really just the value that it's painting in there. So I love the tools they put in here, but sometimes I wonder about the choices in naming them on some of them. Some of the terminology choices are a little counterintuitive, at least to me. Right. So, and we're actually really close to being done with this, like closer than it might seem. So here I'm alternating between painting weights and smoothing them by holding the control key from time to time when I need to relax something back. Okay. And if you hit the Alt key, you'll be removing weights. So look right there. Okay. I don't want to overdo it on how rigidly I weight these shoes. I want them to actually be, even though they're kind of hard shoes, I want them to still be kind of pliable, because that's going to make it play much more nicely with poses later on. It's just little bits here and there. And let's see how well that transfers over with a symmetry command. So weight editing, weight map symmetry, left to right. None too shabby. None too shabby. Oh, we can see right here though, a little bit of a problem around those laces. Complicated areas of mesh are usually where if that command is going to fall apart, that's where it's going to happen, is on something like this. So let's just go in here and a little bit of smoothing. Let's just make sure we give both feet a little bit of love. Okay. Okay, we're close. We're very, very close. Very, very close now. All right, so now we're really close to the end on these. We have some spaces showing up and little things like that. But again, all that is going to get corrected by our final shape that we'll apply coming out of ZBrush. So let's just take a moment. Now, if, I have a key command bound so that I can walk up and down my timeline. If you look at the bottom of your screen in Daz Studio, you see there's a timeline because you can animate in here. I know most users probably don't even touch that. I've had some people say they don't even know that you could animate in Daz Studio or Poser. I actually, outside of Poser and Daz Studio, I do a fair amount of work as an animator. And so animation is something I always look for. And there's some interesting ways that I use it in the course of production. And this is kind of a little 6S1 inside deal thing here. You know, this is something that I do that I don't know very many other people who do this, but it just makes sense. You have the ability to change frames over time, and so if you want to compare things when you're rigging something, you can rig, move to another keyframe, change a pose, go back and forth, but then alter the rigging, and the alteration to rigging doesn't change over time. But you can examine what you've rigged over time using the timeline. So if we wanted to check and see how well this is all deforming, I could restore my figure, say at the first frame, and then I'll just go down to like frame 5 and apply my pose again. And by scrubbing back and forth along the timeline, I mean, yeah, we could do that moving the dial or whatever, but I like being able to have these frames already set, and then I've set up key commands in my preferences so that I can use my left and right arrows to move back and forth. So a lot of times this is kind of my personal little trick for working with skin weights on just about anything. Whenever I'm doing skin weights, most of the time, I shouldn't say whenever, but most of the time when I'm doing skin weights, I will get a basic pass of the skin weights, and then I'll set keys at like 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 or even further. I'll set a bunch of keys for different poses and things, especially for things that I know are problematic, things that I know people are going to be looking for. I'll set keys for the rigging, or set keys for the pose, and then look at my rigging at those poses, and then I can arrow back and forth and actually paint skin weights at different keys and just kind of see how it's all going to blend together in the end. So that's kind of, you know, there's your tip for the price of admission for the day is sometimes animation is actually a good rigging tool. So just if you do that, remember that when you finish up and you go to save everything out, you want to go to your parameters and go to the drop down at the top, and where it says clear animation, you'll clear it for the figure, because Daz Studio, strangely enough, actually keeps your keyframe data on a figure when it saves it out. I find that bizarre. I think they kind of need to fix that, but in the meantime, you can clear the animation before you save it. So here we have our default pose. If I scrub down my timeline, we'll go and see our end pose, and we're extremely close. Extremely close. Really, you could probably keep that and not even need to use our final shape out of ZBrush, but we have it, so let's use it. So with the shoes, oh, this is an important tip, an important little point here. And one of the nice things about using animation this way, we can scrub back and forth, we can see our skin weights, we can see how far we've gotten. We have a final shape over in ZBrush that we want to use. Before we go to use that, I will send this over from ZBrush just to make sure that I have my connection reestablished through GoZ. I do that a lot. I've seen a lot of times GoZ come unhinged. And so I kind of, just as a preventative measure, I like to send and resend stuff fairly often to make sure that that connection stays intact. Once I send this stuff, then we'll send it back over, and we're going to have it reverse out deformations. That way all of this rigging and stuff will stay intact, all of our joint bending will stay intact, and it'll only move the vertices. It'll reverse out the positional changes of vertices from where you see them, and then add in our final sculpt. So let's just pop over to ZBrush. And if I wanted to make sure that I had this shape saved anywhere, I could actually save that in a layer. And maybe sometime we'll do a little bit of look at using layers. Layers in ZBrush are not like layers anywhere else. They're a really weird, kind of cool, kind of handy thing. But that's just a little sidebar there, is that we could save all of these different shapes as layers if we wanted. So I'm going to select my shoes. I'm going to send these over to ZBrush, and you can see here that we actually do not have our connection made. And it looks as though I even have some flipped normals on something, or something's not displaying right. So I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm just going to go back to my shoes demo. Let's go back to our default pose. Let's send this back over from ZBrush. Sending it from Daz over to ZBrush let me know that that connection was not made. So we're going to send it back over from ZBrush, hit Update an Existing Object, and then I'm going to hit Accept. And do I want to update base mesh? I could hit Update base mesh. I don't really care to. I'm just going to call this Scratch. Actually, I'm not even going to name it. I'm just going to delete it here in a second. So let's go to Edit Mode. We'll delete that generic ZBrush morph once it's there. But now I know that when I send these back over, we should have, yes, there we go. So now I can switch between, this is the shape from ZBrush, and that is our final shape. So I switched. I'm going to come back to ZBrush. I'm going to name this, or come back to Daz Studio. Sorry, I'm going to name this morph. Let's call this demo shoes underscore. And I'll put these in all caps just so that it screams at me and I know to make sure I hide it in the end. Final shape. And I'm also going to, just because it's a habit, right click and toss this into hidden correctives. Reverse deformations is a yes. And do I want to preserve existing deltas? I'm going to say yes. Hit accept. Okay. Now let's select our shoes, go to hidden. And there we have our final shape dialed in. And once that's dialed in, I'm going to right click it and hit lock. Lock selected properties. And then hide it. And there you have our completed shoes. So if we go back and forth now in the default pose, since we locked that final shape, the default pose you're going to see, remember how we had those shapes that we changed, you're going to see that stuff re-enter, but you're not going to use that in the default pose. I would hope not anyway. Another option that we could use, I prefer to lock those things and have them like that, because it's like, if you're going to use these shoes, you're going to use them in this pose. Here's the pose, use it. Another option that we could use, though, is if we go into the morph that we made there. Let's unlock it. We could actually slave that morph to the controller that we built on the G3 female that drives that pose. That might be a little more elegant sort of way to deal with this. Let's see. Someone says, see, Kim says, I like to save out extra OBJs just in case. Yes, extra OBJs, backups, all that kind of stuff. It's one of my favorite things about ZBrush is the quick save and the way it recovers stuff. It's saved me so many times. It isn't even funny. So anyway, let's make this visible again. This morph that we did, we will unhide it. Okay, so now it's visible. It was really visible anyway, but now we can actually just see it, so it's faster for us to find. Then it is unlocked. I'm going to go to my parameters on that and just set my min and max limits on it. Okay. And then if I right click my Genesis 3 female, select her, we have show hidden turned on. If we go to currently used, we should see our pose listed. Why is that not listed? Nope. There it is. The name's just kind of long. So there we go. Laced up panel, high heel pose. That's set to 100. So if I right click that now, excuse me, I want to make sure that I set this guy to 100, which it is. Okay. So now if I go to my currently used, I can see both of those. So I'm going to right click, ERC freeze. I believe the shoes are going to need to be parented. So let me just change those. Let's see, fit shoes, change their parent. There's a right click, change the parent to the Genesis 3 female. So now I should be able to ERC freeze. And now we have demo shoes final shape. So I'm going to turn all of this off down here. So, and if I try to restore my shoes, you'll see nothing changes, nothing happens. So now we won't even get distortion in this default pose. It'll just follow because I've applied this pose that's driving our controller, and we have the shoes ERC'd to that controller. So their final shape is actually linked across to her. So from there, I'm going to change the name on these. I'm going to call this CGB September 23rd Demo Shoes. Then I'm going to add a subfolder over here. CGB September 23rd Demo Shoes. And I'm going to save these. Actually, I'm going to get rid of... Oh, is it going to crash? Okay, cool. Whenever I see the little circle pop up, I'm like, oh no! So let's see. Oh, I put that folder in my poses, so that's not where I meant to put that. So let's just delete that. Create a subfolder. There we go. So I'm going to delete my demo shoes from here because I don't want those there. I want them in their own folder now. There we go. And I'm going to call this the same name. Make sure to change my vendor name to CGBytes, the good folks who bring you these lovely seminars. Save it, and we are good. So that completes rigging these shoes. And since all of that is additive, we should be able to apply poses, work with it, and do all kinds of cool stuff. And it should work great. So it's one of the reasons I like using that that little animation trick there to test, you know. So if I were to grab my Genesis 3 female, and let's go down to some of these pose controls, we should be able to see some things, you know, like, where do we want to go with this? Let's go to our legs. So there you go. That's a good way to test that. I like that they put those in there. The those pose controls are something that's very similar to some things that I built into my Scarlet figure that we released last year. It's nice having some pre-made movements and things that are built into dials like that if you're into rigging, because then you have this quick way of just dragging a dial to check things. All right, so today is going to be a pretty quick session. I think that pretty much covered everything I wanted to go over with rigging shoes. If anyone has any questions, by all means, let me know. You could post them here. If you rewatch this later and you have any questions, you can also leave comments on the YouTube page, YouTube channel. You can also look us up on Facebook. You know, look up CGBytes, type in CGBytes, pretty much anywhere you're going to get that. You type in 6S1, pretty much anywhere you're going to get me. And you can look me up pretty much anytime. I think folks, we got a lot of regulars showing up for these things who are probably kind of used to hearing me say this, but I'm going to say it just in case there's new folks. I didn't really go through the usual introductions and stuff at the beginning, but I am Les Garner. A lot of folks call me 6S1. I actually prefer to go by my name, but 6S1 is the name of my studio, 6S1 Media. I'm here as the Director of Artist Development for CGBytes, and what we do with these seminars is just trying to provide a new sort of learning resource, preferably a kind of interactive learning resource to help you know, folks who either are already artists selling content with CGBytes improve their skills, or folks who are interested in coming aboard pick up some skills. So anyway, if you dig this sort of thing, be sure to like and share and help us spread the word as we're you know, moving forward with more of this sort of thing. So let's see. Oh yes. So someone's asking about what are we going into next week. Let's see. There was some discussion as to whether there was going to be one next week, but I feel like folks are into having these weekly. So I actually my Cinder Blue says my head now hurts. Thanks as always, great seminar. Watch back through it. I know I was probably a little bit klutzy with this one because the shoe thing is something that it's oftentimes some experimentation, but if you watch back through, maybe I'll do an actual, just a straight recorded video sometime where I kind of pare it down and get real specific and give you just a tight version of it. But you know, sometimes I think it's cool to see folks who are supposed to know what they're doing fumble. But let's see, question on Skype about terrains. If you ever get a chance, I know you're busy. Mike, I will look up on Skype and see about that, and try to get with you about that after maybe after the seminar a little bit, after I get a little bit of lunch in me. So anyway, next week, what do we have on tap? At some point coming up soon, I'm probably going to miss a week. What I might do if I have to miss a week, just so you folks know, there's like, I actually had kids and all kinds of stuff, and the timing of this can be a little rough sometimes. So if I have to miss a week, I will pre-record one and do that, just so there's something for you guys to watch in an off week. Let's see, off-topic ZBrush question. Well, I'm going to finish this thought, and then I'll come back to that question. But I will be here next week, and we've discussed it, and we're going to start a series starting next week that I'm kind of excited by, because so much of what I've been teaching in these has been so focused on technical stuff. And there's actually a lot of resources out there for that. I mean, not as many as anybody would like. Everybody would like more resources on learning nuts and bolts of how to do things. But next week, we're going to start taking some of this stuff that I've been teaching and move it into more of a conceptual area where what I mean by that is we're going to go into character development. And I know that inside the world of Daz Studio and Poser, character oftentimes means one thing to a lot of folks. People, there are people who are referred to as character makers, and it has a meaning there, but that's part of what I'm going to be going into, but by no means all. In fact, that's a small part of what I'm going into. What I'm going to be going into is how to bring kind of the approach of game, film, or comic style character design into our little world. Because that's kind of a world that I work in. I don't think he could be here today, but one of my partners, Josh Crockett, who you guys have seen here, he's spoken a few times. He was actually on with me for one of the sessions. Josh is a professional concept artist who is officially part of 6S1 Media now, and Josh brings to the table quite a bit of experience doing concepting for film and television. I myself have worked in that role a number of times, film, television, gaming, and comics, and so what I want to try to help you guys, or introduce to you guys next time, is how a lot of the artistic concepts that we use in the outside world. The world outside of Daz Studio and Poser, how a lot of the concepts and artistic approaches that we use to that, and a lot of the methodology of those areas actually apply here, and how some of the coolest products you're ever going to see in this market, especially in terms of clothing and character design, all relate to those kinds of character designs, those kinds of approaches. It's our market, our community is a really strange one where you get this crossroads between folks who may start as hobbyists and just kind of build this into something that they do for fun, that's a hobby that they pick up some extra money with. You get a crossroads between those people and folks kind of like myself a little bit, like Josh, some other folks I know who sell content, who come to this from the quote-unquote high-end communities and approach it from a completely different mentality. So my understanding is the majority of the folks in this come at it from the hobbyist side and maybe don't have a whole lot of experience thinking about things in that that other mindset. And I want to introduce you guys to that because it's something that I think has a lot of value to it. And I think that there's a lot that can be said for creating really cohesive character design. Thinking about things, not just like am I going to sculpt a new shape for the character? Am I going to do a new skin texture? All of the stuff I've shown you so far. We've done some clothing. We've done hair. Now we've done shoes. We're probably going to throw in some character morphing and a little bit of texturing work in there along the way. But all the stuff that we've covered so far actually all points, these are all subsets of and point to comprehensive character design, overall character design. So that's really where I want to help push you guys to and lead you to, is fully realized character designs where you can go, where you can actually start from maybe some sketches. And I know a lot of folks in this don't even draw traditionally, but still, we're going to start out with some concept art, some sketches, pull some references from different places, look at a lot of different things from fashion, things from fantasy illustration, from games, from movies. We're going to look at a lot of different sources. We're going to come up with a character concept, and then we're going to build that thing top to bottom. And when it's done, there it'll be. There you'll have a completely, fully realized character concept. And there's a lot of ways that relates into product for folks who want to sell products in this market. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach that and use it. You could come up with a concept, do a completely realized concept, and have it be one big fat kit that people can buy, and boom, they've got the entire idea there in one place. Or a lot of times, concepts, characters have multiple ideas embedded in them. There may be a jacket design that works for the character, and you're going to use that. And then there may be pants or a skirt. There may be shoes. There may be a weapon. There may be a skin texture or a shape to the face or an alien idea that breaks out somewhere. That all together create a character, but you may have these components that could all break out into their own little products. So you sell them as smaller kits. There's so many different ways that all that stuff works. But in my experience, I find that I enjoy the work most when I approach it with an overriding character concept in mind. And it seems like I do the best work at that point because I'm enjoying it more. And a lot of times I think folks really dig getting those fully realized concepts made available to them. It's something that can make your work feel much more complete. I don't know. It's just maybe that's just me. I don't know. But from doing this for a long time and the response that people have gotten to the way I like to do things, it seems like something that works pretty well. So I want to take you guys into that world a little bit, and then we'll see some things that come out of that. Hopefully that'll work out well. So anyway, I'm gonna take a quick look back through the chat and maybe respond to some questions and things. Let's see. So I'm gonna scroll back up just a little tiny bit. Let's see. I see where Kim says, I want to also talk about relating our stuff to the outside world. Let me tell you, I would love so much to someday get into introducing you guys to some of my pipeline, because I do work in those areas, and even when I'm working on, I could be working on something that's for a show, TV or film or whatever, or work on something for a game. And, Poser and Daz Studio actually end up getting used in those places far more than a lot of the quote-unquote high-end folks ever want to admit. Ever. I think it's hilarious. A lot of the stuff, our market, our little world here is kind of a dirty little secret to a lot of folks who for whatever reason, it's they have their reasons. I get it. It's okay. I ain't hating, but the thing is, the stuff that we do and the stuff that we have here actually relates really well. We've actually been a part of something really cool that has helped drive a lot of technology, a lot of interesting things forward in some ways that I think a lot of folks using the software probably don't even realize. And there are pipelines and applications for this stuff far beyond what the majority of users ever get into touching with it. So I would love sometime to kind of just there's no way we could do it all in one, or even honestly even a series. It would take forever to get into all the ways this stuff actually can relate out to the broader world. But I'd love to take you guys through showing some of that kind of stuff sometime, because it's pretty neat. Let's see. What requirements, file structures, and so forth, common mistakes vendors make. You know, Henrico, at some point I think we should probably do one of these that just is a kind of an open discussion forum for an afternoon, just dealing with, you know, things that are concerns to vendors, potential vendors. I don't like, actually, I don't use that word a whole lot. I prefer just to refer to folks as content artists, because we're artists. Even if you're just making whatever you're making, you're still an artist. So, and vendor, you know, when I say vendor, I think of like a vending machine. I think I'm, you know, it's like I'm not spitting out M&Ms here. But yeah, for content artists, I think there are a lot of legitimate concerns and questions and things like that. And sometime we should definitely throw this wide open so we can talk about that stuff. So let's see. Let's scroll back through and look at some other questions. Yeah, actually, Terry says earlier that we're off for a week and then we have the 4-part. So actually, we won't be here next week. That's I knew I had that on my mind. That's why I had mentioned doing a video of some sort, just, you know, so you guys have something next week. Yeah, next week I'm going to put up a little do a video on something. I'm not quite sure yet, but I'll tell you what. Since next week I'm going to have just a video that we put up. You folks talk amongst yourselves here for a moment and give me some ideas. Maybe I'll pick an idea out of what you guys say, and the folks who are here will get to guide what happens next. But after next week, we're going to start that big 4-part series I was just talking about, which right now it's tentatively 4 parts. It may have to go a little longer, but I'm going to try to cram it into 4 sessions. So anyway, I'm glad I caught where Terry said that, because I actually had completely slipped my mind. Terry, folks, by the way, Terry, who pardon me, kind of wears a number of hats for CGBytes. Terry is kind of my like I wander. I tend to be involved in so many things at once that sometimes I have to have somebody kind of wrangle me, and Terry is sort of the official wrangler for CGBytes. She helps keep the less moving in the proper direction. So I'm glad I caught that from her, because there's plenty of times doing stuff for CGBytes that I wouldn't know which end was up if it weren't for her. So that also reminds me, you know, I want to thank CGBytes for doing this stuff. I think it's a great resource. You know, it's super cool for me to be able to offer it, and you know, the work that everybody does there is really cool. It's a really great place. I really want to see more folks giving them a shot as a place to sell your goods. I mean, I know there's other stores. I'm never going to slam on any of the other stores. And everybody's going to find places and things that are a good fit for them. You know, that's how this works, and that's okay. That's cool. You know, I mean, you'll find 6S1 stuff in other places as well, but you'll also find the CGBytes is very much a home to us, and I really like the way that they deal with things there. And in the course of that, you've got Loki, who you see on here. Loki is the promotions guy there, and he does a lot of stuff with you know, with tossing out our links and helping spread our stuff through social media. And then Terry, you know, is kind of like the, you know, she is the Swiss Army girl there. She's kind of the jack of all trades, helping, you know, keep things moving. So love these folks, love what they do, and hope you folks will, you know, will bring some of your stuff their way, and you know, just kind of help keep that whole ball rolling. So I'm going to scroll back down through a little bit more. Let's see if there's any more questions. Let's see. My 4-part sessions. Let's see. Riverthorn, off-topic ZBrush question. Can you mask with a gradient somehow without hitting blur and stuff a billion times? Yes, sort of. I know that's probably the least helpful answer possible. The answer is yes, sort of, kinda, but it's weird. There's a little trick you can use. I'll pop over and show you real quick since I do have it over here. It's sort of a little trick, but it really is very dependent on UVs, which is kind of the thing. We could take an alpha, like alpha 27, that gradient, and toss it into our alpha channel and rotate it one way or the other, and then go into masking and hit mask by alpha, and you could see it applies it. But the thing is, this is an image map, right? And it's going to apply it based on our the position of things in the UV map. It's like applying a gradient across your UVs. You're probably not going to get the result you really think you should get out of it, or want out of it. So the answer is kinda, but not really. It's a weird sort of thing. The alternative to that is using the transpose tools, which I'm a big fan of. I'll take like a move transpose tool, and this also is kind of the answer is, again, yeah, kinda. You can use the transpose tools to create masking. You hold the control key down, click and drag, but you'll notice that it follows topology. So where that gradient method I just showed you follows UVs, this follows topology, which can be very useful. And it comes in with its own natural gradient. So that might be more in line with what you're looking for. The other thing, too, if you hold the control key down and just start clicking, that will blur your masking, which might also help you out a little bit. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Cinderblue, I have a question on seam separation in the Daz Zbrush group. If anyone wants to help, it'd be appreciated. Cinder, if you would I get a ton of messages, a ton. So it's like, depending on where they are at, I might not always catch them. Some things fly by me and just slip through the cracks. But if you have something that you'd like for me specifically, personally, to take a look at, you can send me a link to it over Skype. Get with me on Skype and send me a link to it, and that is probably the fastest, most assured way to know that I'm going to go look at something and respond to it. Or you can just send me your question on Skype, and I'll do it personally. I do that all the time for people. You can also PM me on Facebook. I answer things there quite often. There was a day and age where I would have said email me, but frankly, spammers have ruined email as far as I'm concerned, and yeah, email kind of sucks. I still use it because everybody has to use it, but it's not like it's not the best way to reach me. But PM me on Facebook or Skype me, and I will be sure to look at whatever it is and see what help I can be. So yeah, I see Kim seemed to have shouted character makers. Let's see, what time officially classes start? Terry got that. Susan, conceptual design. Yes, that's different. Yeah, the conceptual design stuff, I'm really looking forward to that. And I haven't really ran over this with Terry, but where I want to go after that, after concept design, after that we're going to do a monster, because come on, folks, it's 6S1. We got to do a monster. We got to do a monster at some point. So stick around through the concept stuff. Then we're going to tackle a big beastie, because it is time. It is time. It is time. And yeah, I think that'll be worth your time. It'll be fun. You know, that's a lot of this stuff. A lot of the stuff with clothing and all that stuff. That the design aspect is fun. The actual production aspect it's grunt work. You know, I mean, it is. It's like, oh, hey, cool, I got this great idea. Now I have to do all this work to make it real. But and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I actually enjoy the work too, or I wouldn't do it. But when it comes to monsters, there isn't too much in the course of making those that I don't enjoy. It's just fun for me, top to bottom. So I want to share that with some of you guys. So we're going to be off next week. I'll be posting a video of some sort which I'm going to get to talking about that in just a minute. Then we're going to do 4 weeks, getting into actual character design. And then after that, we're going to go into creatures. We're going to do a creature top to bottom. That'll definitely take more than one session. But I want to go there unless there's some mitigating circumstance, some outcry from our friends who are hanging out with us for these things, for something else. If you guys are interested after we finish the concept stuff, that's where I want to head to, is into doing some kind of a really nasty, kick your sorry ass down the road sort of monster. Let's see. Cinder Blues. Poly paint would be nice. Well, there's going to be poly paint included in a number of things moving forward. Loves me some poly paint. Susan says, still do it old school. I'll tell you, once you get into poly paint, really embrace it. No. that's there's so many reasons why you will very rarely, I mean, let's see, this is September. I think I have done texture editing in Photoshop a full total of 3 times this entire year. Not gonna do it. Poly paint is the bomb on so many levels, so many reasons. Love it, love it, love it. Let's see. Oh yeah, and Terry says be sure to tell them this event is hands-on. Yeah, the stuff that we're going to be doing with the character concepting and all that kind of stuff is going to be very, very hands-on. One of the reasons that I'm going to be having the week off next week is I am taking a little bit of time to push more into, I've talked about it just about every time, but I'm taking some time to push into Google Hangouts, looking at Google Hangouts and Facebook live streams and different ways other than just this. Like, this stream is great, but the lag and the time delay between, you know, things that I say and things in chat and all that, it's a little weird. It's a little clunky. So what I'm leaning toward is Google Hangouts, because I know that you can also have that session go to YouTube when it's done. So that is something that we need to get in place. I'm really leaning towards that, towards using Google Hangouts for this. And for what I want to do with the character concepting, I actually want to be able to see screens from people. Now, it will, my understanding is it will have a limited amount of interactive attendance, like screen shareable attendance, with like the way that works is I'll share my screen just like this, but then folks who are part of the actual screen share group, that part of the Hangout will be able to share their screens. You'll see them across the bottom. I do think that the chat to that is open to anybody who's watching, though. But for bandwidth's sake, there will be a limited number of seats for the actual screen sharing. And we've got some stuff to talk about on the back end about how we want to open that up. Do we want to do it as a sign up? Do we want to do it as first come, first serve? But I really think that, you know, with the number of people we have regularly here, I don't think that that's going to go too far over that limit anyway. So we'll see. We'll see. There's some stuff to talk about there that we're kind of working out on our end. So let's see. Yeah, I've actually been doing, like, sometimes I'll just do a random Google Hangout. I see some folks talking about Google Hangouts. The last week or so, I've been doing every once in a while just a random Google Hangout or a Facebook live stream, just for the sake of testing it out. I actually ended up in a Google Hangout the other night while I was working on an outfit, and ended up, you know, chatting with somebody, you know, for quite a while. And it was really interesting. It was really kind of neat because with the Google Hangout stuff, I had some folks come in who are actually from a completely other industry that I work in. I do a fair amount of work in the comic book industry. And so it was kind of neat because there's like comic book artist Google Hangouts that I'm a part of. And I was doing one for my 3D stuff, and some of my comic book guys came over, and it was kind of nifty. It's kind of cool being able to use something like that as like, hey, what are you guys doing over here? Oh, this is what we're doing. What are you guys doing over there? So it's pretty neat. Let's see. Yeah, the reason that I really want to go to Hangouts too is that especially with the character concepting stuff, like probably the first week of it, I'm not necessarily going to be doing a whole lot of in software work. Like I'm probably not going to model a whole heck of a lot that first week. It's going to be different. It's going to be a little different. I hope it doesn't lose anybody. I hope everybody I hope y'all are interested in something a little different. Because, like I said, I think I said this earlier, that there's a lot of resources out there that show you, this is how you move this polygon. This is how you weight this map. This is how you do this, that, and the other. And that's all cool. But I want to get you guys into the conceptual side. Because I find that if you're turned on by an idea, if you have an idea and you want to realize it, the desire to realize that idea is going to drive you to push your skills. You may have some really crazy idea for this mecha gauntlet weapon thing with a bunch of stuff hanging off of it that does different things. Well, that idea, you may look at it and go, wow, that's a great idea. I love that. I want to do that. How do I do it? Well, the thing is, a lot of folks, I think, are actually constrained in the opposite direction by saying, oh, I don't know how to do that, so they don't bother trying to think up cool stuff. That sucks. That sucks royally. I hate that. I hate that for people. I'm like, oh my God, you're so... Yeah, it would just... I can't imagine being trapped in that box like that. And so what I want to do is start a series that is meant to help you guys break out of your boxes, And I'm going to get kind of odd sounding for a second, kind of philosophical on this a little bit, but what is the point of doing this stuff if we're not making cool stuff? What's the point? Yeah, there's a financial component where I make stuff and I get paid for it. Yay. It's my living. I've done this for a long time. I'm very blessed in that. But at the same time, I make my living by dreaming. That's what I do. I make my living by putting my imagination out there, and that's it. Somebody may look at me and say, oh, well, you make your living using ZBrush and Maya. And no, that's not what makes my living. These tools have nothing to do with my living. They have nothing to do with my income. They do. They're the tools. It's like if I went and built a house, is my income dependent on the hammer I use? No, I'll use whatever hammer is handy. I'll use whatever hammer I need. I'll use whatever ruler I need. I'll use whatever I have to build that house. But guess what? If I don't have that house in mind, I can't build that. If I don't have that house in mind, none of those tools mean a damn thing. So, I want to take you guys there because there's tons of people ready and willing to show you how to hammer a nail. I want to show you how to design the damn house. Because once you've got the design for the house in mind, then you can start looking and go, okay, I want stairs there and an elevator there. How do I build that elevator? How do I do that? Start thinking about your end goal and then work backwards. That's how you develop a plan. That's how you figure out the tools you need to learn to get to that end goal. I think that there's a really cool thing to be had in approaching things that way. So I see Mike is bowing out on us. I think he's got stuff to go do. So Mike A, have a good day, man. Terry says we all want to be stonemason. I don't want to be stonemason. I want to be 6S1. I'm much happier being 6S1 than I would ever be being stonemason. He's stonemason. Let him be stonemason. I don't ever want to be somebody else. I'm me. And that's part of the thing, though. Before you can be you got to be willing to dream. You got to be willing to think, take your imagination and put it out there. You know, take the vision you have and put it out there. I actually believe that everybody has vision. Everybody has the ability to dream and come up with stuff and think and feel and come up with ideas that move them and do cool things for them. But I think people are scared. They're scared of failure. They're scared of the amount of work that goes in and all that kind of stuff. And so that's where we're going to go. We're gonna start. Yeah, Terry said I meant the skills. I knew she'd get a little salty with me. I was just picking on you, Terry. But that's where we're gonna go. That's where I want to go with this stuff. Is where I'm helping you guys. The point is not for you to become amazing Daz Studio technicians or poser technicians or ZBrush technicians. The point is to help you guys become badass artists. Period. That's the point. Riverthorn says, I want to create things that make people's jaw hit the floor. Exactly. And, you know, there's a funny component to that I'm going to share before I sign off for the day. There's this kind of philosophy that I have that I want to share with you guys that I think is really cool. And I want to leave you on this thought and just kind of let this bounce around your nuggets for a bit. I'm not special. Not even remotely. I am not. Gina hears me say this stuff. Gina works with me quite often on stuff. She hears me say this stuff frequently. I probably annoy the crap out of her with it. But I'm not special. I'm not a special little snowflake. I don't believe in special little snowflakes. I believe I'm made of the same muck and dirt as everybody else is. I'm not special. We're all the same in all the ways that really matter. That being the case, I have an imagination. Well, guess what? So do you. If something means enough to me, if something is interesting enough to me, that I want to put the effort into it and make it a reality. If I like an idea that much, well, I'm not special. So odds are somebody else probably likes that same sort of thing. You know? I mean, that's what fandom is in the world of geekiness, you know, with all the comic book and sci-fi and horror and all that stuff that I love. That's what it is. That is people sharing what they like. And when someone has an idea, maybe they haven't seen it before, well, guess what? Somewhere along the way, there was a guy named Gene Roddenberry who hadn't seen Star Trek before, but he dreamed it, and he made it. He wasn't unique. Enough other people wanted something like that. They just didn't know it yet. He just happened to be able to put it out there. There was George Lucas, you know, pulls some influences, puts something together that nobody had seen before, but people wanted it. The only thing remotely unique about any of these people is having the courage to put those ideas out there, to say, oh my God, I've got this idea. I think other people will dig it because I dig it. And if I dig it, surely somebody else does. Well, if you like it, if you think it's a good idea, it's probably good. Some things catch on with more than people than others. Those are the things that end up having, you know, larger market value and all that. And when you get into business and all that stuff, you start thinking like that. And sometimes you need to think like that. There's a place for that. You know, I'm not going to knock that. There's a business component to a lot of stuff that I do. But if it starts from your heart, from your imagination, and you recognize, you know, if I just sit on this, if I hide this from the world, well, then guess what? You're just holding on to it for you. You know, you may say, well, I could never do that. Well, that's just fear stopping you. Don't be afraid. I want I don't believe in fear. Be fearless. Be courageous. Be willing to take your ideas and say, man, this is cool. I'm going to get this out there. And you know what? If nobody else likes it, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You tried, and odds are somebody else is going to. You're going to connect with somebody, and if you don't, that's okay. You look at it and go, well, you know what? Let's try this again. I have other ideas, and you just keep going. You keep going, and you create, and you create, and you create. You break those boxes, you know, and I love that. So that's, you know, that's what I want to help you guys do. I want to help you guys learn how to break these boxes and be willing to be fearless. Be willing to fearlessly dream things, put them out there, put them down on paper, put them down in pixels, and chase those damn things. Make them happen, and then share them with people. Because that, I mean, I've been doing this kind of stuff for 23 years. And that is what I've always done. That's all I've ever done. My adult life, all I have ever done is art for a living. And the entire reason is because somewhere along the way, I learned not to be afraid to just put my ideas out there and run with it. So there's all kinds of tips and tricks and techniques and cool, fun stuff that I'll show you guys about how to make stuff. But the real thing that I want folks to come away from this stuff with is that. Be fearless, you know? And that's why the next series of stuff that we get into is really going to deal with concept, going to deal with imagination, going to deal with getting your ideas together, thinking things through, you know, how to take a concept and hone it and turn it into something that you really want to make, so that then you have the desire to see it come to life. You have the desire to push through all the steps you need to go through to make that thing reality. So anyway, that's you know, that's kind of the spiel I wanted to leave you guys with, is just kind of you know, make sure that you're ready to get your head in that headspace. That's where I want to take you to, and once you get there, man, it's everything changes. Once you become fearless like that and are willing to do cool stuff, you know, you'll stop looking, like if you're already a quote-unquote vendor at this stuff, you'll stop looking at the market and say, well, what's hot right now? What should I make right now that's going to make me a bunch of money? No, you'll stop that. You'll stop that dead in its tracks, because frankly, if you look around and say, what's hot right now? What do I make that makes me a bunch of money? Well, somebody else already did it. It's there. You could see it. Now, the thing that's going to make you, the thing that's actually going to bring you reward, both artistic edification and financial edification, is creativity. Being original. Coming up with an idea and putting that thing out there so that people go, oh my God, have you seen this cool new stuff from so-and-so? You know, that's the thing. That's where I want to take you guys to. So anyway, yeah, I think about that kind of stuff a lot. So yeah. You guys can laugh at me all you want, but it's okay. Anyway, that's where I want to take you guys to. So I appreciate everybody coming out. I hope that that through my fumbling and bumbling around today, you all picked up some cool stuff. And hopefully you can make some shoes after last week and this week together. So I want to put the question out there real quick. Since next week I'm just going to do a video and upload it to release on Friday. Let me know, you know, give me some ideas, folks, real quick on something that you'd like to see me cover in that time. Center's channel here, Katy Perry. Ooh, yeah, good old Katy. At the moment, I'm actually leaning toward doing a video for next week on doing the UV layouts, maybe using these shoes as an example. I was thinking about the UV layouts. I was also thinking about showing you how this whole system, like actually the process of rigging these shoes for Daz Studio, there's almost an identical process that I use for it in Poser as well. I was thinking about showing you some stuff there. Gina says hard to choose. Lighting. Ooh. Well, you know, that's another subject that we could totally do some stuff on sometime, is just some nuts and bolts stuff about rendering. I'll tell you point blank, I'm at a point now where I would rather render in Daz Studio than just about anything else. And that's saying something. I mean, because like I love doing stuff out of Maya with like Mental Ray, but I'll tell you what, iRay is, God, iRay blows my mind. You know, there's a reason there's iRay plugins for Maya and Max and everything else too, because iRay is kind of a big dog. Like I don't know if folks who were playing around with Daz Studio oftentimes realize, but man, when they got iRay in there, man, they shoved like they loaded up about a 2-gallon syringe of 3D steroids, shoved it right in the leg, and didn't hold back. So I'm seeing a few things about rendering. Rendering and texturing. Oh, I'm so torn. Tell you what. Let's do maybe. See, if I do polypaint, there's a lot of different things to cover in polypaint. Polypaint's it's almost misleading because there's different things to think about in polypainting, like a piece of clothing versus a character versus all kinds of other stuff. There's a lot of different things with that. So let's see. Let's do next week. I'm going to do a video for you guys. Actually, if I see a camera's DOF pop up in there, I think next week I'm going to do post a video for you guys just on rendering with iRay and some camera techniques. A real specific set of stuff. It's actually a very reproducible set of steps that I go through to get, you know, some of the artwork. I've got some artwork right now. I wish I could show you, but I can't. I actually, because of NDAs, I can't show it. But I'll show you guys some stuff next week on rendering and using cameras, and then we'll set poly painting aside for maybe another time. And because if I do poly paint, then I'm going to want to go into specific aspects of it for different types of things. And that's actually, there's going to be poly painting covered. Like once we get, like we're going to do the 4-week deal on concept. That's going to be like concept to completion of a character. So there's a lot of conceptual stuff. There's also going to be a lot of nuts and bolts stuff contained in that, and poly paint will be part of that. So let's see. Yeah, you know what? Let's treat next week as this then. And Terry, if you're still with us, maybe take a note and remind me about this later, because I'm sure I'll need to be reminded. But let's have next week. I'm going to post a video for you guys that's just going to be some rendering, like camera rendering, and maybe even a little bit of promo rendering type help, because there are some tricks that I've developed in iRay that just spit out insanely gorgeous renders, stupid kinds of fast, like crazy fast, that are great for product promos. So, and I know for a long time that was actually something that I despised dealing with. I still am not a fan of doing promo artwork. Because by the time I finish making something, I probably don't want to look at it for a while, but it still needs to get promoted and out the door. So, so yeah, let's do next week. We'll deal with some rendering, some camera stuff. I'll put together a nice package for you guys for that. Oh, cool. Terry says we're about to start having promo artists available. Yeah, I know there have been some talk and some work with that. I didn't want to say anything because I don't like to step outside my, outside my area too much. But yeah, there's so yeah, let's do we'll do a video on rendering for next week, and I'll share that with you guys and we'll post it. I will not be here live next week, but the week after that, we'll start our 4-parter, and some really cool stuff coming down the pipe. So, folks, I'm gonna call it a wrap. But let's see. And yeah, Terry says, so if you're a CGBytes vendor, let her know, and she can see if there's room in the beta program for that. Yes, please do that. If you're a content artist selling content at CGBytes and you need help with promos, get with us about that. Yeah, some good stuff coming there, and again, cannot stress enough. Share. Tell other folks. Would love to see the numbers in our attendance grow, and would love to see more of you folks coming on board to CGBytes and giving them a shot, because they're good folks there. So anyway, I am out. You folks have a good rest of your Friday wherever you may be. Till next time, I'm Les from 6S1 Media, and this is the CGBytes channel, CGBytes Artist Development Seminars. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you next time.